Hey, Bobby Manning here. Welcome to a news edition of the Garden Report, the first contract settlement effectively this offseason for the Celtics before the draft on Wednesday, before free agency begins on Sunday. Oshae Brissett, their only player option, decides to opt out of that contract. It was going to be for $2.5 million, the league minimum this year. He signed a 2-year deal last summer as one of Boston's wing front court pickups. It worked out pretty well. The shooting never panned out as much as you hoped it would have, but he had one of the more remarkable offensive rebounding seasons that I can remember from a role guy, a bench guy on this team. Obviously, someone like Ennis Freedom comes to mind, and Tristan Thompson maybe had a strong rebounding year here, but in their system where they want a corner crash, he was excellent at it, and he adapted pretty well to it. Didn't play much during the playoffs, but when they had a couple injuries strike in that Indiana series, he came in that game 3, I think it was, where they went small and helped them win that game. So worked out well for him here. He wins a championship. Obviously, a guy I've loved covering back to my Syracuse days, and we'll see what happens here. I actually thought he might opt in just to guarantee he stays with this team, guarantee that he gets a full, minimum guarantee this year. I get it. He can probably get a little bit more than this. Not too much by staying with the Celtics. Would they do a 2-year deal with him to effectively double that price tag he would have been opting into this year? I don't know, because they have so much to address in that front court. Xavier Tillman is a free agent. Luke Kornet is a free agent. And again, the shooting didn't quite pan out with Brissett the way you thought it would. He's a good defender, can guard fours. Five's a little tougher for him. They didn't go small a ton this year. And that's the thing I guess you could say is if they played small more often, if he was out there in small ball lineups more often, you would feel better about him staying with this team. But when they're going big, when they're going double big, most of the time in the second units, you'd figure that they'd prioritize their center depth there, guys who played consistently for them this year. Luke Kornet, I think, is going to be a guy that they make a priority in free agency. Xavier Tillman, a little bit more difficult of a fit. Offensively, he didn't quite pan out after the trade from Memphis the way you thought it would. So maybe if he gets away, and he certainly has a defensive versatility, defensive metrics that could cause other teams to give him a longer look. I think backup big is a need for teams across the NBA. One that they might even use, mid-level money, even if it's just that taxpayer mid-level money to acquire. So, if you're Brissett, if you're Tillman, you could maybe go out there and get yourself $5, $6, $7 million, whatever that mid-level is now. And that's something that the Celtics certainly can't reach. Brissett, they don't have his bird rights, so they can't even go there. They don't have their mid-level because they are a luxury tax second apron team. So this is probably going to be a situation where Brissett goes out there, sees if he can get multiple years at the minimum or that mid-level exception, which would effectively be 2 years of the minimum. And more playing time, I'm sure, is something that would be of interest to him, especially if it is in a contending situation. I know he told me in the locker room that this is the kind of situation he wants to be in for his career. After that championship there. But of course, for a guy like him who hasn't made a ton of money in his career, if that opportunity arises coming off a championship, you certainly want to take advantage of that. So I guess not all too surprising that he opted out today. Again, I think guaranteeing he stayed with this team would have been a possibility as well. And it's going to be a lot more difficult to stay with this team now. Of course, Celtics still need to pad that front court depth if he does depart here. Do you look to a guy like Jeff Green, who has a team option with Houston late in his career, maybe doesn't have that expectation to play a ton, but if you plug him in, maybe he can help you a little bit in a similar position. PJ Tucker, probably not, just because he didn't react great to not playing in LA last year. You need someone who's going to be okay not playing, and that's certainly something that Brissett excelled with. His former teammate, Jalen Smith, going to decline his player option at $5 million, so you'd have to think he's going to be even a little too expensive for Boston there. And then you go down the line, like Derek Jones, Jay Crowder, all those guys, along with Brissett, might just be too expensive for the Celtics. So this is the situation they're in right now. Cam Reddish, probably too expensive. Do you look back to Lamar Stevens, who they didn't give a real long shot here in Boston, and then ultimately traded for Tillman? I think that's going to be probably something that they don't go to, but we'll see. It's an option. Again, you can't be picky here. Do you draft multiple guys, bring in multiple develop behind the departure next summer, and certainly other guys off that bench who will come up. Peyton Pritchard, they're fortunate that they signed him to a 4-year extension last year at that kind of money, because it just allows him to stay on that bench. It allows them to have flexibility, maybe turn him into 2 guys down the line there. But as far as Brissett goes, will be interesting to see how his market shapes up because he is a 4. He is one that hasn't shot well over the last couple of years here. And he's a guy that was more of a deep reserve guy for Boston, but definitely a guy who grew to be beloved in that locker room. One who stepped off the bench when needed and succeeded in a playoff situation. And one who is a strong plus offensive rebounder, which is something that this team likes. Something I think endeared him to Joe Mazzulla. It's why he had to roll over Lamar Stevens. Even in that Indiana series, they go to him over Xavier Tillman in that spot. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with Tillman, who really didn't excel the way they wanted him to offensively either, but dealt with injuries, dealt with a midseason trade, is someone that could maybe project to step into that Al Horford role long term. He's on the younger side, so is that someone you prioritize over Kornet because of that? Obviously, Kornet's a little bit more positionally limited at that position. So that front court's going to be something to watch. Celtics go down to 190 with that opt-out. Sam Hauser, Nemesh Keita, the other guy in that front court dynamic, has a $2 million team option. So right now you're talking about 4 empty roster spots where Shvi Mihailuk, who's also going to free agency, Brissett, Kornet, and Tillman were. Keita, I'd imagine they would pick up that team option, $2 million for Keita. I think you take that. And Peterson, Davison, they'll be restricted free agents. This is the last year Davison can return on a 2-way. So all 3 of those 2-way spots open right now with those guys free agents. So that's going to be what you watch for Sunday first. Draft on Wednesday. We'll start talking about those prospects, who the Celtics could potentially take on Wednesday. They have the 30th overall pick as well as, I believe, the 54th in that second round, which is now going to take place on Thursday. But for now, the first news of the offseason, Oshae Brissett is going to become an unrestricted free agent. Celtics can only offer him $2.6 million or so. So just about what he opted out of here for 1 year. Do they go 2 years to keep him? That'll be the question, I think, and whether he stays or he goes. And we are brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS and get a 100% deposit match up to $100. NBA Finals over. But WNBA rolling along. You got stars like Angel Reese, Caitlin Clark, points, assists, rebounds. You know the deal. Pick 2 players, pick their stat projections, pick more or less on them, and you got your daily fantasy team. It is our official daily fantasy sports partner, and use that code CLNS, and you're going to get a 100% deposit match up to $100, along with supporting the Garden Report. Also, a big shout out to our other sponsor here, Game Time. Obviously, finals over here as well. You don't have to chase some of the toughest tickets in the game. It's summer, so what are we talking about? Again, women's basketball. You got baseball going on right now. It's a little bit of a quieter time in the sports calendar, but still a hot time for deals over at Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use that code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. That can go a long way on baseball tickets. Those usually aren't most expensive, and the best deals are right up until game time, even a little bit after game time with that Game Time app. Baseball especially. Fans just trying to get rid of those tickets. And if you use that $20 code, you might be paying very little for baseball tickets this summer. Of course, terms apply. Use that code CLNS to get $20 off your first purchase. I'm Bobby Manning. There's been a news edition of the Garden Report. Oshae Brissett opts out of the second year of his contract. That would have been worth $2.5 million. I'm Bobby Manning. We will have more draft coverage throughout the week and more continued reaction to the Celtics NBA championship. Talk to you soon. Hey, Bobby Manning here. If you made it this far, you probably enjoyed this video, so subscribe, turn on notifications, and check out our social media platforms at Celtics CLNS.